Hi, my name is Latoya and I'm from the Caribbean. I never expected I'd have the school bully wrapped around my finger. If you're new here, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. When I was 5 years old, my parents died in a car crash and I was sent to live with my grandmother. That's where I met Keegan, my best friend and our neighbor. In our town, everyone knew we were pretty tight-knit. I loved our quiet little part of paradise. In 4th grade, everything changed when the Pillage family came to town. They bought a few of the stores and turned them into large shopping malls. Not only was our town no longer quiet and peaceful, but the Pillage's son, Victor, was in my class, and he became the school bully, even to the teachers. During 5th grade, Victor stuck a sign on my back which said, "Pinch me." Every person I passed in the hallway that day pinched me until Keegan pulled it off. Once, on a field trip in 6th grade, Victor locked me in the bathroom. The janitor unlocked it about 30 minutes later, and I got detention for a week for separating from the group for over 5 minutes. Can you believe it? Then, in 7th grade, during the talent show while I was singing, Victor rigged a bucket of ice water to fall on my head during my Stella performance. I was sick for 3 days. In 8th grade, he stuck glue to my chair, and when I stood up, my skirt ripped. The entire class laughed at me as I shimmied out of the class with books covering my behind. I had to wear boys' pants from the Lost and Found. Ew. It didn't matter what Victor did, he always got away scot-free because his parents donated large sums of money to the school. One summer, Keegan and I sat on the swings in front of Grandma's house. I wish I didn't have to go back to school. I can't stand Victor. Why can't they just send him to a boarding school or something since they have all that money? Victor isn't so bad. Isn't so bad? May I remind you of everything he's done to me since his family set foot in this town. Before I could ramble on, Keegan leaned sideways in the swing and captured my lips with his. When we pulled apart, I was breathless and speechless. My, Keegan chuckled. I think I found the secret to snatching your words away from you. I pulled Keegan in for another kiss and it was his turn to be speechless. I've had a crush on Keegan since I was about 5, but I didn't want to ruin our friendship. I was just happy that he felt the same way about me. That summer, Keegan and I were inseparable, and Grandma kept telling me it was just puppy love. I couldn't wait to walk to school hand in hand with my new boyfriend on the first day of school. But that didn't go as planned. When I got to Keegan's house, his mother, Mrs. Hines, said he'd already left. When I got there, I realized his hurry to get there. His tongue was wrestling with Harper. What the freaking heck, Keegan? I thought you were my boyfriend. Latoya, did I ever ask you to be my girlfriend? No. Harper, will you be my girlfriend? Sure. And they began to kiss again right there in front of me. I ran all the way to the girls' bathroom and hid in a stall. I heard a notification on my phone and checked it. A shiver ran down my spine as I played the video. Someone recorded what just happened between me and Keegan and posted it on social media. A tiny logo on the side of the video read Victor's Videos. I stormed out of the bathroom in search of Victor, and when I found him, I wanted to punch him in the face. I found Victor chatting with a group of boys. Victor, you jerk! I swung at him, but he sidestepped and I landed in the bin behind him. He and his friends laughed and walked away. This year was supposed to be my best year yet. It was only the first day and already my year had gone to trash. Or so I thought. One day, the district superintendent, Mr. Flynn, was to pay a visit to the school. Our principal, Mr. Burns, ensured that the school was spick and span for his arrival. That's when I saw Victor spray painting a picture of the principal with his finger up his nose on the back of the school wall. Ahem. Victor spun around. It seems as though you're somewhat in a predicament here, Victor. I wonder what Mr. Burns will do if he sees this video. My lips curled into an evil smile. I've waited for a day like this forever, and I wasn't gonna let it slide.
My parents own this school. I can do whatever I want.
Okay. I shrugged and walked away. Later that morning, when Mr. Burns found the painting, he was furious. He called an emergency assembly to address the school.
The person who vandalized the school wall needs to step forward immediately. The longer you wait, the worse your punishment is going to be.
Mr. Finn shook his head and grabbed the mic from Mr. Burns.
This is a very serious matter, punishable by law. When you are caught, the police will be called.
I spotted Victor in the crowd and his face was white. After the assembly, he approached me.
Name your price.
I thought your parents owned the school.
Name your price.
The price is you, Victor. Enjoy today because tomorrow, you're mine. I patted him on the shoulder as I brushed past him. The next day, boy did I have fun bossing Victor around. He had this coming for years. I made him do all my homework, feed me at lunch, and wipe the side of my mouth, and give me piggyback rides to class. I also made him apologize to every person he'd ever been mean to.
I don't want to do this anymore.
Victor looked at me after 2 weeks. What will mommy and daddy think about their perfect little boy being dragged away by police officers? I don't think that'll be a good look for their business. Do you? Victor cringed, then went back to feeding me grapes. One afternoon, while walking home from school, Keegan rolled up beside me on his skateboard. Hey, Latoya, how have you been? I ignored Keegan. Come on, babe, we used to be such good friends. I heard that Harper dumped you. According to her, you don't have what it takes to keep her. I looked Keegan up and down. You witch. Keegan pushed me into the road and skateboarded away. I heard the sound of a horn followed by screeching tires and a bang. I opened my eyes to see a car smashed into a tree. It must have skirted away to avoid running me over. I ran towards the car. It was Mrs. Hines. My eyes clouded with tears as I flagged down an oncoming car. Please, help her! I screamed. It was Victor. Victor and his driver hopped out of the car. While the driver called for help, Victor held me. Once Mrs. Hines was safely in the ambulance, Victor offered me a lift home. We sat silently in the back seat as tears continued to stream down my face. Keegan's mom could be dead because of me. Well, also because of Keegan, since he was the one who had pushed me onto the road in the first place. Victor took my hand and held it until I reached home. Thank you. I hopped out of the car and ran inside to tell Grandma about Keegan's mother. Unfortunately, Mrs. Hines didn't make it, and Keegan had the audacity to blame me. I thought Victor was bad, but Keegan was 1,000 times worse. After what happened to Mrs. Hines, I had a change of heart towards Victor. I figured life was too short to keep enemies. I preferred to have friends. Here you go.
What are these?
Cupcakes. I baked them myself.
Do they have laxatives in them or something?
No, silly, I just wanted to say thanks for what you did a few days ago. And I'm releasing you from your servant duties. I promise I won't tell anyone that you painted the principal on the school wall. Victor and I heard a gasp behind us, and we spun around. So, you're the culprit, huh? Latoya may not tell your secret, but I will. Keegan, you can't. I can and will, but I'll make an exception if you give me a kiss right here and right now. I stepped towards Keegan and he smiled. I was about to kiss him when Victor pulled me away and punched Keegan in the stomach. The boys wrestled on the ground until Keegan was able to get away from Victor. I'm gonna tell Mr. Burns, you're both going to pay for this. Keegan sprinted in the direction of Mr. Burns' office and Victor and I chased behind him. The three of us burst into Mr. Burns' office at the same time. I was the one who painted the picture of you on the wall. I blurted out before Keegan could say anything. Keegan and Victor were chased out of the office. A few minutes later, a police car arrived and I was taken to the station. Shortly after, Grandma arrived at the station, followed by Victor and his parents, who looked furious. I watched as Grandma pulled Victor's parents to the side and chatted with them. Victor stared at me from across the room, but he didn't make any attempt to come towards me. Grandma and I left 15 minutes later, but Victor and his parents were still chatting with an officer. Later that night, the doorbell rang and I answered.
No one has ever stood up for me before, not even my parents.
Maybe it's time to change all that. Before I knew what I was doing, I leaned forward and kissed Victor. I was super happy when he kissed me back. Suddenly, I was yanked away and I heard the front door slam.
After what that boy just put you through, you're standing out there kissing him. You better get some sense quickly, LaToya. You need to stay away from that boy. He's a troublemaker.
But there was something about Grandma telling me not to do something that made me want to do it even more. So, I did. Victor and I began to spend a lot of time together before and after school. I thought finally life was going to be smooth sailing from now on, but it definitely wasn't. At the championship congratulatory party for our football team, Keegan approached the mic. First, he congratulated the school on their team win, and then he said something that changed my life forever.
I have a question for the crowd tonight. Have you guys and gals ever dated a member of your family?
The crowd began to boo and jeered at Keegan as cups and soda cans made their way to the stage.
You guys and gals might think it's gross, but Victor and LaToya don't think so. Victor, my man, how does it feel to date your niece?
Victor and I looked at each other, startled. The crowd booed us and began to throw trash at us. They chased us out of the school compound. Do you think what Keegan said was true?
Nah, babe, I think he's just messing with us.
We got to Grandma's. Let's go inside. I'm gonna ask Grandma. Victor hesitated, but he followed me inside. I found Grandma in the kitchen.
What is he doing here?
I'll answer your question if you answer mine. Why did Keegan just make an announcement to the entire school that Victor is my uncle? Grandma seemed shook. She sat on the chair and folded my arms across my chest and tapped my foot. Well, we're listening. Grandma sighed. Then she explained everything.
When Granddad was away on business for 2 years early in our marriage, I had an affair and had Victor's dad. I didn't want the baby to ruin my marriage, so I put him up for adoption.
All this time, my father has been mistreating me because of his abandonment issues that you caused?
But why didn't you say something after Granddad passed away?
Because I didn't need to. It's my business.
We're dating, Grandma. I've been dating my uncle for 6 months.
Victor is not your uncle. He's not his father's son. His father got into an accident as a young child, and because of it, he'll never be able to have children of his own.
I spun around to speak to Victor, but he was gone. I ran out of the house and saw him running down the street. Victor, wait! Victor hadn't heard that last bit that Grandma had said. Victor still thought he was my uncle. I had to tell him the truth.
Woo! Turn up the music. We all got lit as the music got louder, and the party got crazier. I was dancing my butt off when suddenly a waiter tripped over and caviar covered me in head to toe. There was even some caviar in my nostrils. Ugh! Watch where you're going!
I'm so sorry, sir.
Suddenly everyone started laughing and pointing at me. I was so embarrassed. I turned to my girlfriend, Siri, for help. Babe, please help me clean up.
What? Are you kidding? I'm not getting anywhere near you. You reek of fish eggs.
But Siri got up and walked away, leaving me all alone. Hey guys, what's up? My name's Marlo, and I'm from Italy. Make sure you like and subscribe. My mother came from nothing, but she was a very smart woman and managed to become a billionaire by the time she was 30. When I graduated from high school, my mom sat me down and asked me what I wanted my career to be. An actor?
Done.
The next day, she booked me in a movie alongside Brad Pitt. I soon became a very famous actor. It was too easy. All the girls were obsessed with me, and I was living the dream life. I loved the parties, the food, the servants who did my bidding. I was happy with my life with Siri, my billionaire girlfriend. But as I stood there now, covered in caviar, I realized that no one here truly cared about me. All they cared about was my money and my fame. Even my girlfriend didn't care enough to help me. Fine.
Huh?
That's it!
What's wrong with him?
Is he crazy?
Siri,
What?
we're over.
Oh! What you gonna do about that, Siri?
Damn, he just dumped you in front of everyone.
But Marlo...
You don't care about me. You only care about yourself. I realize that now. I turned to the waiter and helped him to his feet. I'm sorry I yelled at you before.
That's okay.
Siri, goodbye and good riddance. I turned and left Siri gaping back at me like a dumb fish. Man, that felt good. The next day at school, the whole class was whispering about my scandal with Siri. How I had humiliated her. Yeah, she's hot, but she's also a stuck-up jerk. But I didn't say it out loud. It would just bring more attention to myself, which was the last thing I wanted right now.
May Marlo please go to the principal's office now? Your mother is here. It's an emergency.
Emergency? I shot to my feet and rushed to the principal's office as fast as I could. Was she sick? Did something happen? Was it Grandma? I arrived breathlessly. Mom! What happened?
Wow, you got here quick. Come, honey, sit down. It's about Siri.
Siri?
I heard you broke up with her.
Yeah? And?
Why would you do that? Her father owns one of the biggest car companies in Italy. She was a very good connection for my business. You have to get back with Siri or you'll lose us millions.
But Mom, Siri is vile. I don't want to date her.
Stop whining and suck it up. Sometimes we have to make sacrifices, you know?
I can't believe you right now. Seriously. Now my own mother was turning against me. Suddenly I heard a loud whirring noise. Kids were running past me and heading outside, and I followed them to find a helicopter landing in our soccer field.
Do you think it's the president? No way, it's probably an alien.
I pushed to the front of the crowd and groaned when I saw who was stepping off the helicopter. It was Siri.
Sorry I'm late to school today. I had to get something for my best boy.
Siri raised her arms and suddenly fireworks erupted from the skies with the words, "I love you, Marlo."
Aw, she's so sweet. What'd I do to get her to date me?
Siri, stop this.
Come on, Marlo. You know you want me back. Just admit it.
Siri, I will never date you again. I can't believe I actually liked you before.
Marlo, don't do something you'll regret. I know your mom is trying to work a deal with my father.
Is that a threat? I knew you were low, but this is a whole nother level, Siri.
Marlo, don't.
Goodbye. Again. I turned and headed back into the school building. Everyone was shocked by my behavior. I bumped into Mom on the way in.
Marlo, don't tell me you just...
I won't ever date her. Ever. Not to save my life.
Marlo!
I called my driver and he soon arrived, and I got him to drive me home. On the way home, I realized I wanted to get some ice cream so I could treat myself and watch some storytime animated videos later in my room. So I asked my driver to stop at the grocery store. We headed inside and I was picking out ice cream flavors when suddenly I felt someone appear behind me.
How dare you treat King Siri that way?
What did you say?
You humiliated Siri in front of everyone. You'll pay for that.
Who was this boy? Some kind of weird fan of Siri's? But before I could say anything more, the boy pounced on me and started pulling out my hair. Get off me! My driver managed to pull him away, but the boy slipped from his grip and disappeared into the night. Later, when we finally arrived at home, my driver told Mom about the ordeal.
What? That's it. I'm getting you a bodyguard.
No, Mom, don't. I can look after myself. I thought Mom would respect my wishes, but as usual, she didn't. That weekend, Mom was hosting another party, and I was forced to attend since it was at our mansion. I sat alone waiting for the party to end, when yet again, another waiter tripped right in front of me, and this time he was holding a bowl of fish stew. I could see exactly what would happen. I would be drenched, and nobody would care to help me because I had no real friends. But suddenly, as the stew was about to soak me, someone leaped forward and acted as my shield. Oh my God, are you okay? The girl turned to face me and I felt my knees walk. This girl was stunning.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Wow, thank you. If you want, I can help you get cleaned up.
No, it's okay.
Are you sure? Really, I don't
I
mind.
said no, dude. Please, just let me do my job.
Her job?
Marlo, oh, I see you've met Leah.
Who is this?
Your bodyguard.
What? But Mom, I told you.
I know, but I'm your mother and I think you're in danger and I want to make sure you're safe. Leah will be by your side 24/7. So why don't you two get to know each other a little? Psst, I also made sure to hire a pretty girl, to help you out.
Mom.
There's no need for us to get to know each other, Mr. Piazza. My job is solely to protect you.
You could be a little nicer, you know.
And how would that help?
What? It's just nice to be nice.
I don't see the purpose.
Who was this girl? The Terminator? Mom, there's no way I can be with this girl 24/7.
You're one to talk.
What was that?
You two will just have to get along because I can't be bothered looking for another bodyguard. I trust Leah, and she will protect you.
But...
No more buts. It's final.
Ugh. Mom left, leaving me with Miss Smarty Pants. I don't need your help, you know.
Clearly.
The next day at school was horrible, obviously. Leia followed me everywhere. As we walked through the hallways, all the boys were staring at her.
Why does Marlo always get the supermodel girlfriends? It's 'cause he's rich.
Couldn't these guys see I didn't want hot girls in my life? Especially not someone like Leia. She hadn't spoken a word to me all day. All she did was stand silently beside me. It was creepy. On the way to the class, I stopped by the boys' bathroom. You are not coming in here.
But
Don't worry. No one's gonna assassinate me in the bathroom. I shut the door on her and stood in front of the mirror. Finally, some privacy. A toilet flushed in one of the stalls behind me and a boy in blue hair emerged. Wait a second. I'd seen that blue hair before. It's you.
Hello, Marlo.
What do you want?
You have to get back together with Siri.
Are you insane? Why are you doing this?
Because you and Siri were the best couple ever. I lived for you two. And if you don't get back together with her, then you'll have to answer to this.
Ah! The boy lunged at me, but suddenly a shoe came flying out of nowhere and knocked him out. What the flying fish?
I told you I should have come in with you.
Leia.
What was that about not needing me again?
Yeah, whatever. We exited the bathroom with Leia carrying the boy in her arms. I just got off the phone with the police when we bumped into Siri.
Marlo, baby. And, who is this?
Siri, please move aside. Suddenly the boy woke up, and when he spotted Siri, he reached for her and hugged her.
Please help me.
Help you? Marlo, what's going on?
He just tried to attack me with a knife.
You seriously expect me to believe that? Are you calling Marlo a liar? Who are you?
Siri, this is my new bodyguard.
Bodyguard? Aren't you a little young for that? Aren't you a little old to be acting like a toddler? What did you just call me?
Guys, chill out. The police will be here soon. Can you please just hold off killing each other until then? Eventually, the police arrived, and they issued a restraining order against the boy, who we learned was called Jesse. As they took him away, he brushed past me.
Good luck sleeping tonight.
Jesse smirked and let the police drag him out. I have to admit, I was terrified. That night before I went to bed, I turned to Leia, who was standing outside my bedroom door. Leia, earlier today, why did you get so mad at Siri?
Because it's my duty as your bodyguard to protect you.
Really? Is that all it was?
I think so.
We remained quiet, but after some time I leaned forward and hugged her. Thank you for being there for me. I could feel her tense up, but eventually she relaxed and hugged me back.
Of course.
Leia, I have to tell you something. But in a flash, Leia pulled away from me and backed off.
Marlo, I'm your bodyguard. Remember that. Nothing more.
I blushed. you're right. I'm sorry. Leia waited in the hallway, and I went to bed, although I felt a little sad. Soon, I managed to get to sleep. When I woke up the next morning, I was surprised to find Leia gone. Had she left me alone in the night? It didn't sound like something she would do. But then when I got up, I noticed something outside on the floor of the hallway that rattled my bones.
I have Leia. If you want her back alive, then you shall get back together with Siri. Don't call the police. I'll know if you do. Come to this meeting place so we can seal the deal.
Then there was an address and time. I was distraught, not Leia. Sure, she was quiet, mildly annoying, but she had been there for me when no one else would. I had to save her. Later that night, I arrived at the location beside the old abandoned warehouse. I waited for some time. Then suddenly from the warehouse emerged Jesse, dragging a tied-up Leia beside him.
Good. You came.
Let her go, Jesse.
Only if you swear you'll get back together with Siri. If you go back on our deal and break up with her again, then I'll ruin your life.
Man, this dude was insane.
Marlo, don't do it!
I can't let you get hurt.
It's not worth it.
What's it gonna be, Marlo? Your freedom or saving poor sweet Leia?
I looked at her concerned face and I knew what I had to do. Fine, I'll date Siri.
Aha, yes!
No, Marlo!
Jesse started to back away.
Remember, you break our deal and you'll regret it.
I know. He disappeared and I rushed to Leia and started untying her.
Marlo, you shouldn't have done that. I was fine.
Oh, really?
Marlo, I can't bear seeing you with Siri.
Why do you care? Thought you were just my bodyguard and nothing else.
You're right. Forgive me, I failed to protect you.
It's fine, Leia. Come on, let's go home. I won't tell Mom about this. She'll freaking call the cops or something. The next day, Leia and I pulled up at Siri's mansion. I knocked on the door and Siri herself answered.
Marlo, so nice to see you. Oh, I see you brought your annoying friend.
Leia clenched her fist, but I put a hand on hers to calm her down. Siri, I've come to say I'm sorry.
Took you long enough.
I forced a smile. Let's get back together.
I knew you'd come crawling back eventually. How could you resist Queen Siri after all?
While she laughed her butt off at her own stupid joke, I started to imagine what my terrible future would look like. We'd probably end up getting married, have 3 children who were spoiled rotten just like Siri. Siri would probably end up cheating on me and she'd win the divorce trials and probably all the money. I'd end up homeless and begging on the streets. But suddenly I felt Leia move beside me, and she punched Siri right in her slimy face. Leia!
You peasant! You'll pay for that!
Siri lunged at Leia and they rolled on the ground like a bunch of lion cubs. Stop it! While they struggled, Siri's phone fell out of her pocket and I noticed some messages on it. Curious. I picked up her phone and I was shocked to see that she had been chatting with our old pal Jesse.
Okay, yeah. Grab Leah and we'll use her as ransom. Marlo will have no choice but to date me now.
Sure thing, boss. Just make sure you wire me that money, okay?
Yes, you got it.
I couldn't believe it. Siri had hired Jesse to do all those horrible things. Leia, stop. They rolled to a stop with Leia pinning Siri to the ground.
Yes?
Called the police. Siri, playtime's over.
What are you talking about?
I showed her the messages with Jesse.
Oh, oops.
You're a snake. You know that? A few minutes later, the cops were piled in her mansion, and Siri was arrested for all her misdeeds.
With these messages, we'll be able to find Jesse soon, too.
Thank you, officers.
Marlo, please. Come on, you know you love me.
You're a jerk, Siri, and I never want to see you again.
What?
While she cried away, the police took her to the station. Leia and I watched them leave. You should be happy now.
Why?
You don't have to be my bodyguard anymore. The danger's gone. Leia hesitated and then grabbed my hand.
I want to stay.
Really? Why?
Because I've tried to ignore my feelings, but I can't deny them any longer. I like you, Marlo.
I like you too. I took her in my arms and we kissed. I was over the moon.
I grabbed my 5-year-old sister's hand and made a run for it. If we got caught, it'd all be over. We couldn't get sent over the border. We just couldn't. The sound of the dogs barking and the voices and the police officers grew louder with every second. We darted through the crowd until we came to a large drain. I jumped in first, then grabbed my sister and ran. The stench of the drain was nauseating, but we couldn't stop. We ran until everything was quiet in the dark. I sat and held Benita on top of me. When Mom had died, I'd promised her I'd take care of Benita. At this moment, I knew I needed to come up with a plan to protect my sister. This is my true story. However, names have been changed to protect the people involved.
Dev, I'm hungry.
Benny looked up at me. Don't worry, Benny. I'll get us something to eat. We walked along a dirty path. I saw lights ahead and I prayed that they were friends and not foes. A few minutes later, Benny and I stumbled into a refugee village. There were tents and boarded structures close to each other. I asked around for some food, but no one was willing to offer anything until I came to Arjuna and Anya's boarded structure. Anya opened the door and welcomed us into their 2-room home. She quickly made us some sandwiches with something to drink. After we thanked her, Benny and I gobbled them down. We had gone 2 days without eating. Thank you so much. My name is Dev and this is my sister, Benita. We're new here.
My name is Anya.
The door opened and she turned to the person that just came in.
And that's my older brother, Arjuna.
I stood up and shook Arjuna's hand. So what do you guys do for jobs?
There is a company that trains young men to be assistants to billionaires. It's nothing glamorous. We get less than minimum wage, but the income is steady.
How soon can I start training?
You can start tomorrow.
I'd need to get someone to watch Benny.
I'd love to watch her.
Anya offered.
You guys can stay here until you get on your feet. We don't have much, but someone helped us when we first started, so we're paying it forward.
The next day, I cleaned myself up and borrowed a suit from Arjuna. Training lasted 6 weeks where we learned how to answer phone calls, write shorthand, use a computer, practice basic sanitation methods, just to name a few. During those 6 weeks, I wasn't paid, so Benny and I depended on Arjuna's small salary to get by. I did some petty theft and handed the money to Anya to purchase food items. She never questioned where I got the money, and for that I'm grateful because I didn't want to lie to her. After my 6-week training, I was assigned my first billionaire. Over the years, I worked for quite a few billionaires, but they were all the same: mean, ungrateful, and selfish. I was able to put up a wooden structure next to Anya and Arjuna for Benny and I where we lived a very simple life. That was until I met Mr. Cook, who changed everything. During my first few weeks of working for Mr. Cook, who had a wife and 2 teenage daughters, it was a nightmare. I was expected to get to his home at 5 a.m., where I was instructed to iron Mr. Cook's suits and shine his shoes. I was also given domestic chores to complete as well. You'd think that if we were working in the same place, that Mr. Cook would have at least offered me a lift to the office, but that wasn't the case. I was expected to finish all my chores at his home and then travel to work and get there on time. But through it all, I smiled and I was always pleasant. If I had to suffer through a few injustices to give my sister a shot at a better life, then I was all for it. After the first 6 months, Mr. Cook called me to his office.
I must say, Dev, you are the best assistant I've ever had. You're diligent, hardworking, and not once have I heard you speak badly of me or my family.
Thank you, Mr. Cook.
I was just testing you to see if I can trust you with the lifestyle that I live and some secrets that must be kept between a boss and his assistant. Can you do that?
Yes, sir.
Good. I'll be setting up some computer courses and legal document classes so you're better equipped to fill in the gaps at the office when needed. You won't be getting a higher salary, but the experience will be good for you.
I kept my head down, did what I was told, and turned a blind eye to Mr. Cook's illegal affairs and late-night shenanigans with female workers. As the obedient assistant, I'd always call Mrs. Cook and let her know that her husband was in a meeting and he'd be home late. One afternoon, while Mr. Cook was out of the office, Mrs. Cook arrived. Good afternoon, Mrs. Cook. Mr. Cook is not in right now. Do you want to leave a message?
What I want is to see my husband.
You can wait in the waiting room until he comes, ma'am. Mrs. Cook laughed.
Do you really think I'm going to wait in the waiting room like a concubine?
Mrs. Cook walked to the door and tried to open it.
If you don't open this door right now, I'll make sure you never work in this town again, and you get deported to whatever godforsaken land you came from.
I opened the door quickly and Mrs. Cook entered and slammed the door behind her. I sat there nervously as I had strict instructions not to let anyone into Mr. Cook's office without his consent. As soon as I saw Mr. Cook walking towards his office, I walked hastily to greet him. Mr. Cook, I'm so sorry, I couldn't stop her.
Boy, stop babbling. Spit it out. Couldn't stop who?
Mrs. Cook, she's in your office, sir. Mr. Cook stopped and looked at me disapprovingly, but he didn't say anything.
Knock on the door in 5 minutes and say my next client is here.
I nodded and he inhaled deeply before he entered the office. For the next 5 minutes, I sat and listened to angry, muffled voices coming from inside Mr. Cook's office. As soon as the 5 minutes was up, I knocked on the door and opened it slightly. Excuse me, Mr. Cook, your next client is here.
Thank you, Dev. Margaret, we'll finish discussing this at home.
Mrs. Cook pushed past me and exited the office. Mr. Cook sat behind his desk and loosened his tie.
Pour me a scotch.
Yes, sir. After pouring the drink, I handed it to Mr. Cook, who drank it in one shot.
Okay, bring in the Phillip files. We have to get…
Mr. Cook's eyes widened as he held his chest. Mr. Cook, are you okay? Mr. Cook couldn't answer as he gasped for words. Somebody help! A few staff members gathered into the office and laid Mr. Cook on the floor and started CPR. But it was too late. Mr. Cook was dead. Staff members waited outside Mr. Cook's office for the police to arrive. I was taken to the police station and questioned. That's when I saw Mrs. Cook as she sat by another table with an officer as she gave her statement. I wasn't released until midnight, and I arrived to collect Benita around 1 a.m. I'm sorry I got here so late.
It's okay, Dev. We saw the news. Leave Benita to sleep. She'll be okay.
Anya smiled. I looked over at Arjuna. What's going to happen now? I've never had a billionaire die on me before. I ran my hands through my hair frustratedly.
I'm sure the company will line up another job for you soon.
I sure hope so, for Benita's sake. Over the next few days, I waited for a phone call from the company, but none came. I wondered if Mrs. Cook made good on her promise to ensure that I'd never work in this town again. On the news, it was stated that Mr. Cook had died of a heart attack, so I was no longer a suspect in Mr. Cook's death. Even though this was the case, the company never called to assign me a new job. I returned to the streets and pickpocketed people to ensure I was able to take care of Benita. One afternoon, while out in the streets, I got a phone call from Mr. Cook's lawyer. He wanted me to be at Mr. Cook's reading of the will. Arjuna, do you think I should go?
If you're invited, it means he left you something. Either way, it won't hurt to go and see what's up.
On the day of the reading of the will, I walked into Mr. Hudson's office waiting area. Mrs. Cook and her 2 daughters were there. A few seconds later, Mr. Finland entered.
Thank you all for coming.
What is he doing here?
Mrs. Cook scoffed.
He's here because he was invited. Shall we go to my office and begin?
He has no right to be here. What could Stan possibly have left for this low-life assistant?
Mrs. Cook raved on and on that I was just the help and I needed to go home and attend to my own affairs. I stood up and turned to Mr. Finland. I think I'd better leave. I don't belong here.
Dev, you stay right there. I'll read the necessary parts to Mrs. Cook and her daughters, then I'll come and get you, okay?
I nodded and Mr. Finland ushered Mrs. Cook and her daughters into the office. Approximately 30 minutes later, Mrs. Cook rushed into the waiting area and began to accuse me of swindling her husband. I don't know what you're talking about. Mrs. Cook stepped up and slapped me.
Security, get her and her daughters out of here now!
Yelled a voice from the door of the waiting area. After they were escorted from the building, Mr. Finland apologized to me. He also asked if I'd like to press charges against Mrs. Cook, but I told him I just wanted to get it over and done with, so he ushered me into his office. As I sat in the office and Mr. Finland read the will, tears came to my eyes. Mr. Cook had left me $10 billion. You're not joking, are you? Mr. Finland laughed.
Oh no, this is all legit. I guess you really made a mark on him. We also found documents where Mr. Cook was putting things into place so you'd have citizenship, and I'd like to finish the proceedings.
I nodded and gave Mr. Hudson all the information he needed so that I could receive the inheritance and the information needed to get citizenship. I have some friends. Can you help them with their citizenship as well?
Sure.
Mr. Hudson handed me his card.
Have them call me tomorrow so I can send all the paperwork in at the same time.
Over the next few weeks, Mr. Hudson helped us set up ID cards, bank accounts, birth papers, and citizenships. As soon as I received the inheritance, I gave Arjuna and Anya $1 billion. We purchased homes next to each other in suburban neighborhoods. We didn't want anything flashy to bring attention to ourselves. We were now able to enjoy our lives on our own terms. My story seemed to be a lucky one. Or was it? I have a confession to make. I was a computer hacker in my country. However, I knew I had to play possum if I wanted my plan to work. The goal was to get Mr. Cook to trust me, and once that goal was complete, I had everything else in the bag. Once trust was enabled, I had access to everything Mr. Cook had access to. Things such as his medication, legal documents, and of course, a computer. With his heart condition, it was easy to switch his medication to one that would induce a heart attack, and with his constant use of alcohol, it sped up the process. Next, I gained access to Mr. Cook's will and made adjustments where necessary. It was easy to get Mr. Cook to sign his will since he signed documents without reading, because, yup, he trusted me. I also left citizenship documents in Mr. Cook's office drawer. After all, what harm could a refugee boy do to a billionaire? Mr. Cook was just like the others. He had everything going for him, but he chose to be arrogant and selfish. I was able to fulfill my promise to my parents, and now Benita and I have a life that we deserve. You can lose sleep over what happened to Mr. Cook, but I can assure you that I don't.